Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk.
Hello. Howdy. Ooh, look, these were a Mother's Day present from Thing One.
Oh, nice.
They're hatchet earrings. And I kept meaning to wear them. I kept forgetting. I'm like, they're made out of wood, so they're really light. Fun, dangly hatchets.
You would like the podcast Buried Bones.
Probably.
It's a journalist and Paul Holes, the cold case cop.
Oh. And,
but her favorite time period is like turn of the century crime, so she likes to throw those out at him. Because what she does is he has no idea what they're going to talk about.
Oh.
She may say, hey, research this thing, like what this would do to a person,
Mm-hmm.
And then she comes on and she starts giving you information piecemeal. And then, okay, now what's your expert opinion here? Okay, but what if I told you this after it says that? I'm like, I would be so irritated being the co-host with her. Because I'd be like, give me all the information now. So,
yeah,
it feels like a trap. But he just rolls with it. But yes, her favorite crimes are... He
must not mind that. It would be a different dynamic if they took turns.
It's a clever dynamic listening to. I just would not be able to be the person that was being... I'd feel like I was being... Like she was trying to fool or trick me. And that I don't handle that well.
Or making you look like you didn't know what you knew.
Yes. But he knows his shit, so I guess he has that confidence, right? So...
I guess.
I just thought it was funny because the other day she was like, you know when my favorite time period is? And then she brought out the crime.
Hatchets.
I have snakes. Because I got my ears re-pierced professionally because I've been shoving my blunt earrings through them to re-pierce them when I have an event or something. Bleeding all over and then healing for the next few days and then not wearing them for months and then...
There's a horrified look on my face for anyone listening.
So it's like, since I'm here getting my nose done, I will also
Did you get your nose done? Look at you!
I will also get my ears re-pierced.
Very nice.
Yeah, the nose is like a little worse than the ears. It's actually the Hive downtown. It's only piercing. It's not a tattoo shop that also happens to do piercing. It's the first time I've gone to an all piercing shop.
Oh, nice.
So I was able to ask questions like about getting my tongue re-pierced and stuff.
Well, yeah, and actually in the normal course of conversation, I would never know because of the way we sit. I hardly ever
see... It's on the opposite side of you.
Yes, that side of your nose.
So you went and ate at 92 Chicken.
92 Chicken, oh my God. Okay, so I'm obsessed with Korean fried chicken because it is like, they are the best wings in the world, in my humble opinion.
There's a lot of people weirdly obsessed with Korean fried chicken.
It is so...
and there's suddenly like 3 new places in the city.
So it's the batter. It's all in the batter. It's not like a tempura batter. It's a much more substantial batter, but it's also not heavy. It's very crunchy, and the chicken inside is very juicy, and then they put these amazing sauces on it. I learned this week that my taste buds are getting old faster than I am, because I went to, a place, I think you've been with me, Na Rei Thai. Mm-hmm. Love that place. Used to eat there regularly. Haven't been in a while. I ordered something. They said, how spicy do you want your dinner? And Joe ordered his Thai hot. And I was like, well, I'm not that person. I said, I'll get medium. I've eaten medium there forever and enjoyed it. And I got it. And it was too hot for me to eat. Oh. And I almost cried. And the waiter comes over because he can see I'm not eating. And I was like, I am so very sorry. I am so sorry. It's too hot. And he just looks at me and he goes, you know what? I should have told you that the medium is probably a little spicier than you were expecting. He goes, can I just remake it for you? And I was like, you would do that? Because I will name drop Bonchon, because that was the suckiest restaurant experience ever.
That's what people are saying.
Yeah, it's terrible. Terrible service and mediocre food. But anyway, so at Na Rei Thai, he went and the dish remade it, had it back out in a minute, and it was very delicious. So I had 2 good restaurants.
Did you post that in the foodies group?
I did.
You know what? I saw it and I didn't see that it was you. Because you're telling the story and I'm like, I just read that story.
You probably did. Because I'm trying to put positive things out there when I can. So have you eaten anywhere good recently?
Mm-mm.
No.
My husband's out of town. He's at the cabin.
Oh, I was like, where is he?
Once again, the water went bye-bye from the cistern. And the toilet has been cracked since we bought it. But the crack gets worse each year, probably because the freeze cycle the whole winter. Because there's no
freezing,
heating.
thawing, and yeah.
So he went there this time and he was like, I tried to put water just coming straight out of the toilet. So he went up and he was like, I'm going to replace the toilet because we can't stay there without a toilet because we're not using the outhouse. It is full of rats.
Yeah.
No.
And it's a walk in the middle of the night.
Right?
Even if there weren't rats, you would have to
I'm a woman of a certain age. I'm going to have to pee in the middle of it.
And you would have to go down the steps and across the driveway.
And down a hill. That is hard to walk down when it's broad daylight and I don't have to pee. So no, that wasn't going to happen. They put that outhouse really far away from the... Yeah. I'm like, were they camping? Because it is level right there. So they did level it and then they put a shed. So I'm wondering if they used to maybe camp out when they were building. Because we know the very nice older couple at the bottom of the hill that has been so helpful to us and let us keep our tractor there. He helped him build the house.
Oh.
Back in the day.
Nice.
I think it was built in like the 70s that year. It's pretty old. So anyway, he went to replace the toilet and the pipes came apart because they had been badly soldered, which is why they were leaking also, right? So plumbing. He has to replace... Yay. Brent is with a plumber, so he knows it, but it doesn't mean he wanted to crawl underneath a dirt cabin. Like, lay in the dirt.
No one, I would think, married to a horror author wants to go to a remote cabin and crawl underneath
Under there all by himself. Nobody to hear him scream. So that's what he's doing right now, so that we can hopefully go up there.
Lovely.
But my son's going on like a 2-week road trip.
Yeah.
And then one of his friends is coming and staying here for an unknown period of time.
Is the friend like moving here or just...
No, the friend actually moved to California right after they graduate. I mean, the week they graduated.
You told me about that.
Yeah, so they're taking a road trip out to visit him, and then he's going to fly out, and then he's going to stay with us, and they're going to drive him back so they can take a second road trip. Because my son and 2 of his friends are taking a gap year.
Okay.
And this kid is one of the one. I mean, I would take a gap year if my parents moved me a couple days after I graduated too. Instead, I got married when my parents moved in the middle of my senior year.
That's a different kind of year than a funny gap year.
I did take a road trip. It was to move to, or actually we took a road trip down so I could meet Jeffrey's family.
Right.
That was traumatic. Then we took a road trip to move to Oregon.
I've had family instances where I was like, not... Alcohol isn't an issue for me. I mean, sometimes I drink it, sometimes I don't. It doesn't, it could go either way. But I've had instances where somebody was like, would you like a beer? And I'm like, no, I would like 4. Can you line those up for me? And do you have a can opener so I can shotgun them? But, families and stress, they go together. You smoke, I drink.
That's right. Well, I don't smoke anymore. But I did. Because that was a whole different world.
Wow.
It was such a different world that I think I thought was fictional. Texas white trash versus, the white trash I came from, which was Western white trash. I was like, it gets deeper? Yes, it does.
Texas is like its own planet.
I imagine that my Oklahoma family would be similar, and they would be red trash. So... I mean, I wasn't around that much to know. I just visited. But they were delightful. They were delightful people.
I must say, we've met lovely people from Texas.
Oh, yeah.
There are,
of course,
good people from there.
It's a really large state. It would be really shitty if they were all shitty.
It would.
That would be... Then we really would build a wall.
All the way around Texas, enclosing it completely.
I think Texas should just do that for themselves. They should use state dollars and just do that for themselves.
Well, they're not putting it into infrastructure, so why not?
I forgot I made some sort of joke about that to Jeffrey the other day. It's not Texas. It's not their utility grid. But but California's equally bad. And they're like 2 opposite sides of the political spectrum. And I find that hysterical. And Coloradans hate both.
Yes.
Which I also find hysterical because I was born in California. My husband was born in Texas. And I'm like, go ahead, keep talking shit about our families. Well, I'll remember every word you said because I do.
And I was born a Yankee.
Yeah.
And married someone from Arkansas. Like I've said before, I'm pretty sure when Nikki was in college, the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, pretty sure in her file it said, mother is a Yankee bitch. I'm like, now that we've got that out of the way.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
Oh my God. I called him once, just reading him the riot act. And I was telling a mutual friend of ours, Becky Clark, about it. And she looked at me faintly disturbed. And she goes, well, why didn't Nikki take care of that? And I said, oh no, it was her Mother's Day present to me. She's like, you want to call them and ream them out? Yes, I would.
Right.
Somebody
Nikki could.
Oh, she totally could have handled it.
But she was like, you have fun with this.
It was her gift to me. Here, Mom, you look like you need to vent some aggression. When do I not?
That's when I was like going after some of our vendors at the job. And my boss was like, well, I'm glad you have somewhere to take that out. That's not the rest of us. Because I CC'd them on it. Like, my boss. Here, I'll just let you know what's happening here.
I had to write a letter once to an endodontist practice because they had messed up. And I gave my dentist a copy of the letter. I just said, this is just for your file so you'll know what happened in my side of it. I said, you can certainly ask them for their side of it. And he read the letter and he's like, holy shit, I hope I don't ever piss you off.
Yes, that is what I've also now been told. Aim that outward. Do it. So, you want to get started?
Okay. So today's topic goes with my recent obsession with cemeteries and graveyards. I've been obsessed with them for a while. It's not new.
Okay.
The whole, why do some of them have fences and some of them not? It doesn't look right when they don't have a fence or some kind of boundary marker around them.
There's a lot of rural ones that don't.
I know that, but it still bothers me.
Oh.
I think a cemetery should have something. It doesn't
so that there's the demarcation of dead and living?
I think, yes, I think the dead need that demarcation.
You think the dead are the ones that need
dead,
that?
Yes. I know the dead are not the ones complaining. Also, in the event of a zombie apocalypse, would you not want them to be slowed down just that much?
Well, we should be burying them with their shoelaces tied.
I'm for that.
Yeah, that would make sense. Also, when those dead rise, they're going to be crumbly and pathetic. And I don't think I'm going to care. Unless they're World War Z zombies. But those would have to be fresh people, not graveyard people.
True. So, anyway. Also, and you will appreciate this, I'm obsessed with taking pictures in old cemeteries. Mm-hmm. And I found that generally speaking, I like older cemeteries and I like the ones back east because the ones out here are more often just flat. Mm-hmm. And there aren't a lot of trees. I like the Buffy the Vampire Slayer cemeteries. Okay. With all kinds of, with like hills.
Big old growth trees.
Old growth trees. And so, yes.
Okay.
And
have you been to Evergreen?
That's the one here in town. Mm-hmm. I have. I've always wanted to go when they're doing the tours and take the tour. I've not done that yet.
Nor have I.
Okay. So this all led me to, I'm like, where the hell was I going with this?
What are we talking about?
Woo! Yes, we weren't just chatting. I was actually ambling toward my point slowly. So you know that recently someone I know died. Mm-hmm. Someone I didn't care for in real life, so not upset that they're dead. So here's the thing. I was driving, and I said recently, we went to Stamford, New York. And when you're driving up this road, it's like you're driving through the middle of the cemetery, mm-hmm. in part because there are no fucking fences. But so it does. It feels like you're driving up a residential street. You go around a corner and you're just in the middle of the cemetery. So anyway, this was also happened while I was in New York. We drove by the cemetery where again, it was on both sides of the road, but this one had fences, so it's okay.
So it was fine. You were safe.
Yes. And it's also set further back from the road, which is probably more to do with when the road was built.
Yeah.
And I get all that. I'm not an idiot.
Yeah.
I just play one on TV. So I suggested that I could, hypothetically, we could stop and I could do something disrespectful.
Beyond the graves?
Yeah, let's go with that. And the person I was with, who, may I note, did not even slow the car down, said that she was not going to stop for me to do something like that. So she, and also
That's a shame.
she pointed out, it is a big, she's like, I have no idea where this person is buried.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, there are ways to find that out, but I wasn't going to go try to find a caretaker. 4:00 on a Thursday.
Did you detour to drive past the cemetery? No. Oh, so
we just happened to be...
person just happened to be in the cemetery that you had to drive?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's rural area. Anyway,
okay.
She suggested that I just flip off the entire cemetery as we drive past. And I thought about it for a second, and I said, I can't do that because that's disrespectful to all of the dead people.
Honestly, that person being buried there is disrespectful to all the other dead people.
And so she rolled her eyes very hard when I said, you can't just flip them off out the window. No, I cannot.
Because it's a generalized flip off then. Yes,
it's disrespectful to everyone. So, which led me to thinking, what kind of respect do we owe to the dead? That is a topic.
Yes.
So, there's a man named David Sconce who thought we didn't owe them any. See, we got there.
Nice segue. Good job. Well done.
I feel like there should be big flashing neon light segue here.
Yay.
So, Hesperia, California is a town about 80 miles east of LA in the Mojave Desert. Population around 100,000. So it's roughly the size of like Albany, New York or Davenport, Iowa.
That was helpful. Thank you. Yes, I know all about those two places.
I don't know. It was hard to find cities with populations of 100,000. Those were the best known ones I could find. I thought it was kind of in light of this story, I found it interesting that Hesperia was incorporated as a city on July 1st, 1988.
Wow.
Because a lot of this happens just before that, like in the year before that. So, yeah. In January of 1987, the Hesperia assistant fire chief, whose name was Will Wentworth, no shade on Will, he did his job, he got a call from a local resident. The man said that a thick foul smoke had been pouring out of the chimney at Oscar's Ceramics in a nearby industrial area. And it wasn't that occasionally, it was 24 hours a day, around the clock. There's this thick stench pouring out of the factory. And the caller said, it smells like human remains. It smells like human flesh burning. And the fire chief scoffed, and he was like, it's just a ceramics factory.
Now drive by there, fire chief, sir.
The guy said, I was at Auschwitz. I know what I'm talking about.
Oh, fuck.
So the fire chief went, all right, I better check this out. So he went to the scene to check. And and apparently there was like 1 or 2 employees there. And these were not like managers. These were just like very low on the totem pole employees. Of course they let him in. And when he opened one of the ceramic ovens, a burning foot fell out. A burning human foot. Just bloop, out of the oven. So the interior of the building was lined with trash cans that were full of cremated human remains and prosthetic devices.
Wow.
Yep. Now, I did, one of my sources for this is a TikTok. She had a lot of detail about what was found inside the factory. I could not find anything supporting that. Okay. I'm not saying she was wrong, and I suspect what she had was probably correct, but I could not find that detail anywhere else, so I'm not going to share that. So, how did Sconce, who looked like a blonde-haired, blue-eyed surfer boy, wind up in the cremation business? Well, he fucking flunked out everything else, basically. Well, no. His great-grandfather, Lawrence Lamb, purchased the Pasadena Crematorium and then opened the Lamb Funeral Home in 1929. His son, Lawrence, inherited the business. Lawrence was a school board president, upstanding pillar of the community type. So his daughter, Lori Ann, which is the longest spelling of Lori Ann you can imagine, she was a church organist. And her husband, Jerry, who was a Bible college football coach, bought him out in 1985. Their son, David, had gone to college, his dad's college, to play hockey and was unsuccessful as a... Did I just say hockey?
Mm-hmm.
I did. Football. I meant football.
Okay.
Fuck. I'm like... I'm reading along and I'm like, the word that just flew out of my mouth was not the right one. Okay.
I myself also read faster than my brain can keep up.
The word hockey is coming up, to be fair.
Okay.
It is in my notes. Let's try that again. David went to college to play football. He didn't make it as a football player and he flunked out of college. So he worked as a casino dealer for a while and as a hockey stadium usher. Aha! That's the word hockey. When he tried to join the police department and failed the vision test. Apparently he was colorblind.
I have heard of people discovering that way that they're like various jobs. But
I don't know how you get to age 26 and not without knowing, but
because that's normal to you. So.
Yes. If nobody says, "Can you tell the difference between this and this?" and you go, "No, they're both whatever."
Maybe you learn, when they're like, color that with green, you've learned that that's like this shade of gray. I don't know how it works.
I don't either. So anyway, he's 26 when he failed that vision test. So his parents convinced him to get his embalmer's license and join the family business. It is said that David found embalming classes boring. I can't imagine. I mean, there's so much there. I can't imagine it would be boring. But embalming was boring, but making money was not. So he looked at his family's crematorium and he saw a big dollar sign. You know the cartoons where Scrooge McDuck, has the big dollar signs in his eyeballs and he's rolling around in the money? That. He started soliciting business from other funeral homes, offering half-price cremations. So his plan was low cost offset by high volume. And the business took off. To put it in perspective, the company was called Coastal Cremations, and they charged $55 per cremation with no extra charge for picking up the bodies or returning the ashes. Other companies charged twice that amount, and funeral homes were then charging anywhere from $250 to $1,000 to their clients for cremation services. In David's first year, the number of cremations they performed increased by 1,000%.
Good Lord.
Yep. And returning ashes to the funeral home, well, that was no biggie, because at his family's funeral home, they just took it 55-gallon drums of ashes. Employees were instructed, if this is an urn for a woman, put in 3.5 to 5 pounds of ash, and if it's an urn for a man, put in 5 to 7 pounds of ashes. It's just scooped up with I don't know.
Gross.
Yeah. So the family crematorium in Pasadena, which was built in 1895, only had 2 ovens. So David came up with the genius idea of stuffing the ovens. He started by doubling up, then he would get it up to 5 or 6. But eventually up to 18 bodies in each oven.
In one oven?
In one oven. And you have to understand these ovens. One of the articles that I regret that I cannot remember which one, said that the interior of a cremation oven is roughly the size of a phone booth.
Right. It's not like I've seen a bunch of them, but
they're not very big.
No.
After a journalist labeled him the Cremation King of California, he got vanity plates for his sports car reading, "I burn for you." Yeah. What a treat he was. What a catch. I know in cases like this, sometimes you're like, this is an outlier. This person has fallen this nut has rolled far from the family tree. But not always. In 1986, David and his parents expanded the family business with Coastal International Eye and Tissue Bank. In essence, David was harvesting usable organs from bodies sent to their facilities for cremation.
Without permission, I'm sure.
Oh, yes. So you're thinking, shouldn't there be a consent form? Yes, there should. And Mom, Lori Ann, forged signatures when they didn't have one. Mm-hmm. So he was selling them mostly to medical schools. Places like that. So it should tell you everything you need to know that David's employees referred to him as Little Hitler. Right? He also had a group of good old boys that he knew from his aborted football career that he kept on the payroll for doing nasty stuff like, roughing up the competition, beating people up.
I've seen that funeral home services and undertakers, whatever, they're highly competitive. Mm-hmm. Highly competitive. Give us your dead. And then they fight about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can just picture his goons one step down from Supreme Court nominees.
Sadly, his sideline of pulling gold teeth and selling them to a local jeweler brought him an extra $6,000 a month, his bookkeeper later testified. Maybe if you're going to be doing illegal shit, don't brag to your bookkeeper about it. Just a tip. And he took really gruesome delight in removing the teeth with pliers. Further tales included cracking sternums open with a crowbar, and he would tote corpses around in cardboard containers. He wasn't putting them in, that's what they came in. Toting them around the facility for exercise. So instead of a gym membership, he referred to one guy, I don't know if it was a business associate or what, but it was somebody he met in a business setting, and called the guy a one-hander because it would only take him one hand to toss the man's body into a
true yeet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, David's greed began to catch up with him. In November of 86, the crematorium burned to the ground due to both ovens being overloaded with 19 corpses each. They believe that they blocked the chimney. It was so packed it blocked the chimney and that caused the fire. But David had already purchased the industrial site in Hesperia, which was licensed for a ceramics factory, which would explain large ovens working all the time. After he was caught, David and his family went to trial in 1989. David was sentenced to 5 years in prison for mutilating corpses, conducting mass cremations. Who knew that was illegal? I mean, it makes sense, but the fact that we have to have that law.
Yeah.
And having his employees rough up at least three rival morticians. He was almost charged with the murder of another crematorium owner because he bragged about putting oleander in the man's drink before he died. Oh. But the toxicologists could not agree on the cause of death in that one. I think the man died, don't quote me on this, I think he died of a heart attack, and they couldn't prove that the oleander caused the heart attack. So he did skate on the murder charge. His parents were each sentenced to 3 years and 8 months in prison. So David served 2.5 years and was released in 1991. He violated his lifetime probation several times, and after conspiring to hire a hitman targeting another rival, in 2013 was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. So his family was left penniless, not a problem for me, after a class action lawsuit in 1992. I'm happy to report several other morticians were also named in the class action suit because they kept sending bodies despite all indications that something was wrong. And actually, this case led to a lot of changes in oversight in the law in California, as it should. I was not able to confirm if he is still in prison or not, or if he ever became eligible for parole. The most recent news articles about him are from 2013, which was when he got that big sentence, but I couldn't find anything saying he'd been released. He did appeal his sentence in 2021, but it was denied.
Yeah, it's actually surprisingly hard to... I mean, if you know the prison, you can eventually work your way there. I did that with a past case, but...
I did some of it. I went to the system, but I couldn't. And if they're not in the system, it doesn't tell you anything.
Yeah.
So he may well be out by now.
I hope not, because that's not enough time for somebody like that to have.
No. I mean, he would the things, I didn't even include all of the things he did with the bodies. I mean, they were just very disrespectful and treating them like objects. And his brothers, I believe, tried to reopen the family funeral home. It was closed, but they still had the location, so they tried to close it and reopen it under a different name. Somehow they're running into difficulties getting that going.
Huh.
The site of the crematorium, the original, the 1895 crematorium, that was torn down, and there was a business that built there, and there is an apartment above the business, and oh my God, I can't remember. The rent was thousands of dollars a month. I was like...
Pasadena.
Yeah. And I was like, why would you want to live there and pay that much money? So rep for the rebrand was the TikTok I listened to. That also, I have to say, came from Thing 2. ConnectingDirectors.com. Funeral Services news article by Patricia Hartley. An LA Times article by John Johnson. And a Dan Fritchie article on Cracked.com.
Cracked. I haven't read Cracked in forever. I thought about writing for them at one point.
Every once in a while, they kind of
they have
float up.
Great ones, but yeah, they haven't popped up for me in a while.
Yeah.
I'm going to switch which one I was going to pair with this. And I think you might see why.
No, not unless you hit me over the head with it. I am not your smart friend today. Football, hockey, who knows the difference?
Which one? I don't know. Don't they both have a ball? Wait, no they don't. They have very little in common, except that it's rough, huh? All right. So I'm doing The Boys on the Tracks. That's kind of the famous name for this case. In the early morning hours of August 23rd, 1987, a Little Rock, Arkansas-bound Union Pacific cargo train ran over 2 teenage boys lying on the tracks. The engineer, Stephen Schroyer, saw them ahead of time and tried blowing the horn and stopping the train, but the boys never moved. His thing, he was like, their heads, they didn't turn their heads, they didn't twitch, nothing. And the train couldn't be stopped in time. We all know you can't stop a train on a dime.
No.
So plowed right over the boys, dragged their bodies for nearly half a mile.
Oh, God.
Schroyer said it all happened in a matter of seconds, but of course it felt like an eternity as he's sitting there saying, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please, and it's going right over them. The police were called and the boys were identified as 16-year-old Don Henry and 17-year-old Kevin Ives. They were well liked by their peers at Bryant High School and had left home at just after midnight to go spotlighting, which basically is night hunting using a spotlight. That one person shines the spotlight and the animal freezes, so it's shined in their face. Was it?
Deerjacking.
Yeah, pretty much. So it's illegal.
There's a couple of different names for it in different parts of the country.
It's definitely not sporting.
Stephen King mentions it, and I cannot remember. It's not called, it might be called jacklighting.
Something like that. Yeah,
something like that. Anyway, yes, it's highly illegal. And
highly illegal, also very common in our region especially. But in fact, it was his dad's spotlight Don grabbed with his full permission because his dad would go spotlighting along with Don's own .22 rifle. The men on the train claimed to have seen a green tarp over the boys covering their legs, as well as the spotlight and the rifle lying next to them. Police would later say no tarp was found, claiming it was an optical illusion. Surely, you didn't see that. But interestingly, one of the men even pointed to where the cops, he was like, they took the tarp, they set it right here. Like, he remembered it well past when they were seeing it from the train. The Arkansas medical examiner, Fahmy Malak, determined that the boys had died by being run over by the train and that they had smoked 20, I always love it when they call them this, marijuana cigarettes.
Cigarettes, yeah.
They smoked 20 blunts. His official ruling, no, I know.
I'm just trying to envision.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's an awful lot.
They would have had one of those Lauren Bacall voices.
His official ruling was suicide.
Well, I gotta call bullshit on that.
Oh, there's plenty of bullshit coming.
Yep.
But their families weren't buying it. All 4 parents disputed that the boys would have committed suicide. first of all. And secondly, they smoked 20 marijuana cigarettes. A week after the funeral, Malak called the parents back into his office because they were raising a bit of a dust storm. And he said, actually, it was THC intoxication that killed them. And they'd gone into a marijuana coma, passing out in the tracks. Very neatly lined up next to each other, I might add. Yep. Your face says it.
I'm still stuck on a marijuana coma.
Yeah, no such thing. Still, the parents disagreed. First of all, as we've said, that is a crazy amount of pot to smoke in less than a 4-hour period. Second, the boys weren't known to have a big problem with pot. Like, they didn't walk around, stumbling around, glassy-eyed and asking for Taco Bell, okay? Malak was known to frequently just ask the cops what they thought the cause of death was. He was notorious for being a shit medical examiner. Then enter that as the cause of death. His employees had also claimed he was known for falsifying evidence and having outdated equipment. He'd change things right before a court date, so on and so forth.
Nice.
The Ives and Henrys hired their own investigators to look into the deaths, suspecting their sons had been murdered. Additionally, though their bodies had been taken to the hospital for examination, there was no record of them having been there. There were EMTs at the scene, and that report stated that the blood seemed to lack oxygen, as if they'd perhaps been dead longer than the 40 minutes it took for officials to arrive after the initial hit at 4 a.m.
Interesting.
They felt that they hadn't died by the train, basically. This meant they were already dead. So how did they die? And then get laid across some train tracks?
Yeah. I would trust the EMTs.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones who see it right after it happened.
Yeah. And they're going to notice the blood seems awful sluggish and thick, perhaps, or, whatever. In March of 1988, the families called a press conference announcing that a San Antonio toxicologist, James Garriott, had looked at the ME's findings and disagreed that any amount of exposure to THC could have made the boys pass out so thoroughly that a train honking at them, the horn blowing, wouldn't wake them up. It was also stated that no mass spectrometry had even been performed, which is the only reliable test for the presence of drugs. He didn't even do the tests. He just said.
Oh my God.
Yep. A North Carolina toxicologist named Dr. Arthur J. McBray also disagreed that THC could cause the issues Malak had claimed, no matter how much they'd had. Tell me Malak hasn't ever smoked pot without telling me Malak has never smoked pot. Though the sheriff...
reefer.
Right? I was just thinking like reefer madness through this whole thing. It was the reefer! Though the sheriff, James H. Steed Jr., continued insisting that it was all an accident, the families were able to get the case reopened. Basically, one of the moms, and we're going to hear about her. She was a fierce mama bear. She really pursued this. But she wrote a paper, her opinion about Steed and his investigatory processes.
Ooh, good for her.
And what happened is, basically, she had to promise to take it back and support him moving forward for him to reopen the case. A hearing occurred where the cause of death was changed from accidental to undetermined, allowing them to get the bodies exhumed. A medical examiner from Atlanta, Dr. Joseph Burton, was brought on, and he found evidence indicating probable homicide, including a stab wound to Don's back, which was evidenced by both his body and his shirt, and the apparent crushing of Kevin's skull with the rifle. It looked like somebody had slammed his head in with the rifle butt. He stated that Malak had done a poor job on the autopsies, mutilating Kevin's skull by sawing in a bunch of different directions on it, possibly an attempt to cover up that rifle damage, right? If he could make it so you couldn't see what had happened. So they couldn't pinpoint exactly where the rifle butt had hit, but he said this wasn't done by a train. The skull was damaged this way.
And since they probably had the rifle, they could say it matched. Yeah.
Finally, he stated that there was marijuana, but about 1 to 2 joints worth. In other words, the normal amount of pot someone might have smoked in a 4-hour period of time. Only someone who had never smoked pot you could just nobody needs to smoke. There's no need to smoke 20 joints. It's not like that.
Snoop
it's not
doesn't
caffeine.
Smoke 20 joints
in 4 hours. No. This re-examination garnered a finding of probable homicide. My autocorrect, every single time I typed probable, put probably. So I'm surprised I haven't said it yet. The prosecutor brought up the green tarp again, considering 4 railroad employees had seen it. But now the police said they'd never heard anything about a green tarp. The workers never told them there was a green tarp in the first place. Whoa, gaslighting.
Yeah.
Despite his shoddy work, Bill Clinton gave Malak a major raise. I think it was like $32,000 a year. And raise. And publicly supported him.
Oh, Bill, you fucked the pooch with that one. Oh,
it's coming. Clinton comes heavily into play in one of the major theories about the boys' deaths coming up. It would turn out that the boys' deaths were likely part of something much larger than anyone, other than those involved in the probable cover-up, could possibly have known. Perhaps they should have teamed up with someone smarter and better at lying than Malak, don't you think? And also better than Steed. Around this time, a defense attorney named Dan Harmon approached the families, insisting he and his friend Deputy Prosecutor Richard Garrett wouldn't rest until the murderer or murderers were caught. They'd all heard rumors about Harmon, including that he was part of drug activities in the area and that he had been present when the boys died. But Linda Ives wanted to believe that the two men would help solve the case. So she became actively involved with them, passing along anything she learned. She felt they were doing the same. Harmon had trouble keeping up with bills, and Linda even gifted him money from Kevin's life insurance in appreciation for his help and sympathy for his situation. Murmurings in the area claimed the boys had likely walked into a drug deal occurring in the woods, and this is why they'd been killed. It was strongly felt that many higher-ups, Bill Clinton included, were thought to be part of the local drug trade. When Unsolved Mysteries did an episode involving this case in late 1988, Robert Garrett floated this theory on national television, saying the boys, quote, saw something they shouldn't have seen, and it had to do with drugs. It was just well known to people in the area. Even with the changing by a grand jury to homicide and upgrade from probable homicide, the sheriff refused to use department funds to pursue an investigation. He was supposed to have sent the clothing to the FBI to be investigated, but instead sent it to the Arkansas State Crime Lab. Then lied about it. Whether the continued issues with Steed were incompetent blunders or intentional cover-ups, the people of the county had enough, and he was voted out in the next election.
Good.
And his replacement allowed the investigation to continue. Within 2 days of the election, mysterious deaths, all of people involved with the case, started occurring. So as soon as he lost, people started dying. An informant, Keith McCaskill, who had gotten aerial photos of the crime scene for Harmon, was murdered. He was a somewhat prominent figure owning a club at the Saline County line, and he'd claimed he was near the scene of the murder with a woman known as the Lady with the Snow, a cocaine dealer who has since claimed to have sold to Bill and Roger Clinton. Just days before his death, in which he was stabbed 113 times, he told his family he'd screwed up and told the wrong person, said his goodbyes, and made his own funeral arrangements. So certain was he.
He was stabbed 113. Damn.
Yeah. Keith Coney, who had been telling people that members of law enforcement had killed the boys, died in a motorcycle accident before he could testify at the grand jury. It was said he was in some sort of high-speed chase when he slammed into the back of a tractor trailer. Greg Collins was next, shot in the face 3 times with a shotgun on January 22nd, 1989, before he had the chance to testify at the grand jury. These were all people who were subpoenaed. Collins and Coney were friends. In March, Daniel Bearden was missing, so couldn't appear in response to his subpoena, and in April they found Jeffrey Rhodes, who was connected to the case, but it wasn't said how. His body had been left in a local landfill, and he'd been shot twice in the head and burned. Before his death, he'd said he knew too much and that he feared they were coming for him. One wonders whether Daniel Bearden might also be in said landfill. They haven't found him, ever. In March 1990, the deaths were ruled homicides. No arrests have ever been made. Also that month, Jean Duffy, then the Saline County Deputy Prosecutor, was appointed by a judge to lead a drug task force. Her boss told her not to look into any public officials, but that was exactly the direction her undercover agents ended up heading. Exposing Dan Harmon and Richard Garrett, the two that went and made friendly friends with Linda Ives, as figures involved in the local drug trade. Harmon led a smear campaign, ultimately getting Duffy ousted because she could, as her boss said, the same boss that said don't look into public officials, no longer be effective at her job. The M.E., Malak, retired September 10th, 1991, at about the time Clinton was running for president. In 1994, a supposed documentary called by some a propaganda video called The Clinton Chronicles was released. It claimed Bill Clinton was involved in local crimes, including the boys' deaths. This show claimed that Clinton was involved in trafficking of cocaine, guns, and money from Central America from and to. So basically, cocaine in,
weapons out.
Guns out. Yes, and that Mina Intermountain Municipal Airport was central to distribution of these items further into the U.S., and Mina was adjacent to where the boys died. During Duffy's time, word had gotten back to Linda Ives that Dan Harmon was involved with the local drug trade and therefore possibly her son's death. Together with Gene Duffy and Pat Matroschiana, there we go, the person who'd made the Clinton Chronicles, they put together the documentary The Obstruction of Justice about the local illicit drug trade and the higher-ups involved. Linda had learned the hard way that the whispers about him had been right when they'd first started working together. So not only did she lose her son, she got used by this man to probably go back and say, here's what she found out. How do we fix that? Right? Mm-hmm. In July 1997, Dan Harmon was convicted on charges of drug conspiracy, racketeering, and extortion. In October 1997, more charges were brought involving drugs. Harmon got 11 years for the combination of all the charges. In 2006, he helped prosecutors with a case and was released from prison, only to be arrested again on February 19th, 2010, on drug possession charges, compounded by the fact that he was arrested with the drugs in his possession near a school. In August 2016, Linda Ives filed a suit against various officials, including, quite a list, the Bryant Police Department, the Saline County Sheriff's Office, the FBI, the CIA, the U.S. State Department, the Arkansas State Police, the Department of Homeland Security, the Executive Office of U.S. Attorneys, and the DEA for violating the Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, concerning the boys' deaths. A year later, on November 15th, 2017, a federal judge did order 3 of them to turn over unredacted versions of earlier reports, but dismissed the rest of the charges against the other groups. Those he made turn over the reports were the Executive Office of U.S. Attorneys, DEA, and Homeland Security. None of the locals.
It's like, what the fuck? They didn't have anything to do with it.
I think a lot of people were brought in on this in various ways. Then in January 2018, Billy Jack Haynes, a former professional wrestler, released a video saying he'd witnessed the murder decades before. Haynes said he had been involved with the local drug trafficking even while he was famously wrestling. Days after a wrestling bout, he would be doing something here. And he was an enforcer for them back in the 80s. He stated that an Arkansas criminal politician, that's in quotes, who he did not name, had contacted him to be the muscle at a handoff that night. The politician felt money drops were being stolen, possibly by the police officers handling them. Haynes' job that night was to kill 2 of the officers suspected of robbing him. To be clear, he didn't have a gun. He was supposed to just physically pulverize them and kill them.
Jesus.
He was a big guy. I'll post pictures of him. He was there when the boys were murdered as a witness, not as the perpetrator, and he further said that he'd given Linda Ives' PI the names of everyone who was there back in 2016. He has stated that the boys happened across them and the cops took off after them and brought them back handcuffed. They proceeded to beat the boys with their flashlights. I'm imagining those are those big Maglite ones they had. Then drag them to the tracks. He said Don was already dead when they put him on the tracks, but Kevin was alive, so they bashed his head in with the gun. He did say he helped put the boys on the track and that there was a green tarp, which was intended to hide them from the train when it came along. So it sounds to me, nobody said this, but it sounds to me like they probably put it over them completely and it had moved down wind or whatever. He fully states he acknowledges this made him an accessory. He also confirmed that drugs were coming from Colombia and being filtered through the airport there in Mina. He did say he took other people out and that he's prepared for people to come after him for being outspoken about this. He's been speaking ever since then. I watched videos with him in it now as an older man, and the interviewer's like, "Aren't you afraid that they're going to come for you?" And he's like, "Let them." Like, I'm an old man now, and what I wanted to say is out. So, but I will say his story stayed consistent through all the years that he's been saying this. So the PI, who was a former cop, confirmed that Haynes passed lie detector tests, and he didn't feel there was a reason for Haynes to be lying. Cole Campbell, someone who'd grown up in the area, wrote an article in The Boys and went into detail about a man named Barry Seal, better known as the Fat Man. Seal was a well-known drug trafficker, said to be moving about 1,000 pounds of cocaine through Mina during his peak years. He worked for the Medellin cartel in Colombia. While Seal was killed by the cartel about a year before the boys' murders, evidence he gathered in a deal with the CIA does appear to have confirmed his stories and has shown that drugs were being run through that general area at the time the boys were killed. His story also ties in George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan as having some involvement, as well as the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, who were being provided those weapons. It's a convoluted story, and I was like, there's no fucking way I can go into everything about this.
No.
It's insane if anybody wants to look it up. Form your own opinions about whether maybe Clinton was involved in this. It was actually made into the movie called American Made, starring Tom Cruise. I think Tom Cruise plays Barry Seal. Sadly, Linda Ives, who fought hardest of all involved to try to bring her son's killer in, died in June 2021 of sepsis, never having gotten the final answers and convictions she so hoped for. The case remains unsolved, and come on, it always will. It went pretty damn high. She created a webpage at idfiles.com, if anybody wants to look at it, where all the collected evidence she had access to can be found, all those documents that were unredacted, all of that's on there, as well as a thorough list of the bad guys, several of which I have not mentioned here, but they named 2 of the cops they think did the actual killings and which boy they killed.
Wow.
And, of course, it reaches across a bunch of higher-ups, from judges to sheriffs to officers, and possibly beyond. Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Sources: Unsolved, My Saline, which was a local Saline News, THB 11, the Hannibal TV YouTube interview. I listened to an interview, both one of the wrestler and one of the PI on there. And I'm just going to throw out, I do not know what kind of show the Hannibal TV is, whether it's political in any nature. The interviews I listened to weren't, but there was a big eagle with an American flag behind the person being interviewed. And I was like, I don't know if that is some kind of extremist. That's my disclaimer there. Perspective Online, Encyclopedia of Arkansas, Arkansas Online, and of course ID Files, which is Linda Ives' website. That's still being maintained.
Wow.
That story was so crazy.
I mean, they went out. How old were the boys?
16 and 17.
I mean, they went out doing stupid shit, but stupid teenage shit. You shouldn't die for it.
Yeah. There were those who tried to, they were like, well, they were probably trying to steal the drugs or something. And I'm like, I don't think that they would have seen a bunch of cops in the woods and tried to steal the cocaine.
Hey, let's
from
go
them.
try to wrestle the cocaine away from those big, beefy, well-armed cops.
Yeah.
No.
Nope. So,
damn.
Yeah, the article that was written by Cole Campbell, that one went very into detail on the drug trade that had been working through there. So, interesting stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, how come I haven't heard of this one before? Like, there's a lot of mud on the Clintons. And somehow they just keep skating right on out of it.
I think it's because some of it, I don't know this. This is off the top of my head. They've had so many, I'm not saying there haven't been things that were conceivable, but they've also had so much outlandish
weird false stuff, yes.
And the way it's been thrown at them has been by people who...
extremists on the other side.
Yes, you wouldn't trust to give you the time of day. So there's so much people tend to, well, if I can discount these 3 things, I can discount these 472 things.
Yeah. And going back to our coroner learning that we did, right? It is not a surprise that somebody like Malak continue to operate because it seems to me more often than not in this country, it's the shitty ME setup.
Well, and I don't think this is a radical statement. Why the fuck are we electing MEs? Medical examiners. Why is that an elected position?
Well, we elect coroners. I don't know if we elect MEs. I don't remember.
I don't know why it just seems to me that's a job you need a skill set for.
Yes. Instead, they should be getting hired. But I guess if they are being hired, it would be city council. So it's either we vote and elect or our city council does it and we vote and elect them. So
that's true.
Maybe that's why, because the alternative, I don't know. It's just a really screwed up system and needs an overhaul and a bunch of other things here.
Yeah.
Like, say, in general, how we do our policing. It's not going to happen anytime soon. So, but yeah, just reading that, I'm like, I have zero trust at this point. Unless I specifically have some information and I've seen a track record from a coroner or an ME, I have zero faith. Now, the more I learn, the less I trust it. Well, yes, and I voted for him after researching him extensively, so.
And we got to meet him, so.
Yes, and he proved out. He was very honest about how screwed up the system is and how easy it is for it to be gamed.
And how much.
And, like, remember, a lot of MEs are just funeral home owners.
Yes.
Or coroners.
Yes.
That's right, because they run for the election, are actual owners of the funeral home because then they profit off it twice. Mm-hmm. So, I think that there should be also rules involving that, where you can't have that conflict of interest where you stand to profit off of the body.
And he also made a very valid point that coroners, what is the degree that he had? Forensic
pathology?
Pathology?
I think so.
Going into the public sector and being elected a coroner, how much less... Now, I'm not saying they don't make good money, because they do, but that's a fucking harrowing job.
Yes.
And people with the same degree who go into the private sector make so much more money.
Yes.
It's like, how do you attract qualified people to these jobs when you're paying them a fraction of what they could make?
Oh, like teachers. It's funny what our society undervalues and overvalues, which would be, say, athletes. They make so much money for playing a game that they enjoyed playing at the beginning, right? Not saying they still do, but we pay actors and actresses a ton of money. Mm-hmm. And people in the movies, but writers make jack shit.
Yep.
And so on and so forth. So we have said that, haven't we?
Well, and when kids graduate from high school, what makes the paper? Signing day. It's when they're signing to go to college to play a sport. Those are the only kids who get recognized. Yeah. They don't talk about the kids who are getting a purely academic scholarship. They don't talk about the kids who got a scholarship to trade school. Because God knows we need more skilled tradespeople. But no, let's shove 4-year college down everybody's throat.
Right.
Hello, here is my soapbox. Would you like to join me?
I know, because we just went through it, and they burned my son out so badly because they kept saying, you're gifted, you should be going to college right now. No, you shouldn't take a gap year because this, because you have these grades, because you have these scores. And he was like, the more they pushed him, the more he was like, well, now I'm definitely taking a gap year, because he was undecided. And then he just got so burned out on it.
It's not right for everybody.
No. And I mean, now that he's had just this little break, that's all he needed. Mm-hmm. He's like, yes, okay, I do plan on going to college next year, but I'm still taking my gap. And well, you don't really have much of a choice because you have to you have to do your FAFSA and stuff to go next year. I was like, so basically you have another month or two, and then you have to start doing the FAFSA and the applications and all that shit.
I do not miss FAFSA.
No, because I had to do it when I went back to college, even though I wasn't going to financially be approved ever. But then it lets you apply for the other ones. Something came by, and it was David Letterman has created a scholarship, and I don't remember what it was called. Huh. And it's for C-average students because they deserve to go to college too.
Nice. I did not know that.
Yes. So that's something for people to look into too. Because he was like, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't get to go to college. Like, it shouldn't just be, they should be able to get the financial help to go to college as well.
And for a while, there was a spate of books coming out, and one was, I can't remember the name, was it The Nanny Diaries? They were written by someone who was a nanny for well-to-do families, I want to say in New York.
Yeah.
And another one was a guy who tutored kids for tests and occasionally took tests for them. And then there was the big scandal
with the Hollywood folks.
With Hollywood folks who are just paying large sums of money to get their kids.
You think there aren't a billion rich white kids getting into college that way?
Oh, yeah.
And non-white, I'm sure, but mostly rich white kids, because that's what we see here in the U.S. A lot of them aren't fairly in those colleges. There's a lot unfair about it, and we won't go into what just happened with the Supreme Court and all of that. Yeah. But definitely we're rebalancing things back in the favor of those folks again. Yeah, that's sad. On that note.
Well, that's been a fun.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for tuning in. We will talk to you next week. We'll be back with some other scintillating topic, and I will try to have more than 2 brain cells to slam against each other.
You have 5 minutes to prepare those brain cells. Technically. True. And check us out on buymeacoffee.com/mmmayhem if you'd like to support the show for as little as $1 a month. Or one-time donation.
Yes.
That helps with the overhead costs. Okay,
thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back next week with more shenanigans.